Nancy, I want to get your view on this new details, really, from the left-leaning publication ProPublica, and it's reporting that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, a conservative, accepted luxury gifts from a prominent Republican donor for, what, more than 2 decades and did not disclose them. Democrats, as we might expect, are renewing these calls to impeach him over this. But what can you tell us about that report and what it suggests?
So the report by ProPublica outlines luxury trips that the Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has taken on an annual basis with a high-powered, high-dollar GOP mega donor, and they have a friendship that stretches back decades. That is has been known. That is not a surprise, but some really eye-opening numbers. If you look at the ProPublica report, trips on a luxury yacht, at luxury hotels, on private jets, by some estimates, trips that would cost in the ballpark of $500,000 if you had to actually pay for them, for the flights and the yachts and everything else. And those were not disclosed on the Supreme Court Justice's annual financial disclosure reports. Where this gets murky is whether he's required to actually report those gifts, if you will. The Supreme Court's rules, internal rules, have recently been changed when it comes to, not just the receipt of actual gifts, but hospitality, someone's offer to allow you to fly on their jet or a ride on their yacht. And so the question is whether he actually broke any hard and fast rules or whether there's just the image of taking really enormous gifts from someone who acknowledges that they offered this hospitality on a regular basis to the Supreme Court Justice, but who says they never had any pending business before the Supreme Court and didn't ask for anything in return.
All right, Nancy, very interesting stuff.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
And so there is potentially a violation of law here. There are calls for Thomas to step down. We'll talk about all of that, but first, a few details from the reporting. A public servant who has a salary of $285,000, Thomas has vacationed on Crow's super yacht around the globe. Justice Thomas flies on Crow's Bombardier Global 5000 jet, sounds fancy. He has gone with Crow to the Bohemian Grove, the exclusive California all-male retreat, and to Crow's sprawling ranch in East Texas. In addition to this explosive report, ProPublica also had a Twitter thread that included all sorts of multimedia, all sorts of videos, photos of the retreats that they're writing about. Here's one example. At Crow's invitation-only resort, guests enjoy boathouses, a clay tennis court, batting cage, a replica of Hagrid's hut from Harry Potter, bronze statues of gnomes, and milkshakes at a 1950s style soda fountain for free. Rooms at nearby resorts cost at about $2,000 a night, so it gives you a sense of just how expensive this area in general is. But the reason why you don't want Supreme Court justices going to these retreats with billionaire donors of any political affiliation is because of the potential corruption involved, right? So I've got a lot more details to get to, but I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this, Brian.
Well, first of all, this sounds gayer than an episode of Below Deck on Bravo. And I'm not trying to correct you, but the Bombardier plane, okay, that's kind of sexy. Then the super yacht starts to lean into sort of, Andy Cohen, Bravo territory. And then to me, the tipper is just the kind of all male thing they do on the ranch or whatever, which is like, listen, I've been to the Yellowstone Ranch, I know. And, there are women there and there are men there and it's very het. This sounds gay. No, this is, why does everything, maybe there's a show here. Maybe if we got all the Supreme Court justices to go on a yacht together on Bravo, and you call that below something, I don't know, below the bench, and it's a whole thing where all the justices are on a boat together.
Yep.
No, I am being facetious, of course. Listen, we are reminded every so often what a political body this is, and I think we need to come to accept this as a political body. As we would like them to be, something impartial and free from the entanglement of money and politicization and bias and all of that. They are not. And, the stakes are so high every election when it comes to picking presidents who pick these justices. So we are reminded of this. The Constitution is wearing very thin these days.
I mean, there is so little trust in our institutions, and this is part of the reason why. I mean, when you find out about Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio consistently outperforming the S&P 500 year after year after year, I mean, is she really that much of an expert on how businesses are gonna perform? I mean, they're trading individual stock. And it's not just Pelosi, of course. We've talked about this quite a bit on the show. I mean, members of both parties, congressional lawmakers are investing in individual stocks in companies that they make legislative decisions about, regulatory decisions about. So there's all sorts of corruption in that regard. Of course, we know about money in politics, just the Supreme Court, of course, opening the floodgates and allowing for unlimited corporate campaign donations towards super PACs. And then now we hear about this. And what's so incredible is, why didn't he just disclose these trips and these gifts if there's no issue here, if there's no corruption here? Right? And not only was he accepting the lavish trips and gifts, he also failed to disclose it, which he is supposed to do by law. And if you're curious about what kind of investigation ProPublica did to find all the details here, considering Clarence Thomas failed to disclose any of this in financial filings, ProPublica uncovered the details of Thomas's travel by drawing from flight records, internal documents distributed to Crow's employees, and interviews with dozens of people ranging from his super yacht staff to members of the secretive Bohemian Club to an Indonesian scuba diving instructor. So I'm
telling you
they did dig deep.
I'm telling you, this is like.
I did not mean that to be raunchy.
I listen. When you add in the scuba instructor, it is starting to look like a really bad docu-soap. Look, the optics of it are just terrible. I don't know, when was the last time you were invited to go on a yacht on a vacation, let alone go many times? And I'm gonna send my plane for you. And I'm going to wine and dine you on this boat. And I'm basically going to provide you with I know how busy you are as a Supreme Court justice. I want to give you this free vacation, not just once, but then I want you to come to a ranch with me, and then I want you to go to the club, and then I want you to do this. I think the optics are so bad that anyone with any decency would probably have to have some voice in their head that says, I should probably not do this. Thank you, but I can afford my own vacation because I make $285,000 a year. I can swing it. Thank you.
Yeah, something tells me that Justice Thomas in particular, and very likely other Supreme Court justices, are under the impression that they can get away with anything. And Justice Thomas's stint in the Supreme Court started with hearings with serious allegations about sexual harassment. Anita Hill, put everything on the line to disclose that. And she suffered the consequences of that, and Clarence Thomas got away with it. Same with Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, when the system messages to these justices that they can enjoy impunity, well then, yeah. I mean, remember, the New York Times reported on this back in 2011. And he still continued taking the gifts, taking the trips, and failing to file any disclosures about it. And I want to give you more details because it's insane. So soon after Crow, remember that is the billionaire here, met Thomas 3 decades ago, he began lavishing the justice with gifts, including, these are weird gifts, I'm sorry, a $19,000 Bible that belonged to Frederick Douglass, which is kind of cool, I guess, which Thomas did disclose, to be fair. Recently, Crow gave Thomas a portrait of the justice and his wife, who, according to the painter who painted it, Crow's foundation also gave $105,000 to Yale Law School, Thomas's alma mater, for the Justice Thomas Portrait Fund tax filing show. And we have some more creepy photos, including an image of the realistic painting of one of Thomas's visits to the 105-acre property in remote upstate New York. The painting shows Thomas enjoying a cigar alongside Crow and chatting with other conservative power brokers like Leonard Leo. In fact, why don't we talk about that real quickly? Because not only is there the corruption angle having to do with Crow and his close relationship with Justice Thomas, when Crow puts these gatherings together, there are other corporate interests there, right? So even though Harlan Crow says this, we have never sought to influence Justice Thomas on any legal or political issue. Fact of the matter is, Justice Thomas is surrounded by corporate interests during these trips. Like, why do you think this is happening? You think that this billionaire is bringing these people together out of the kindness of his heart, or could there be more of an agenda there? During just one trip in July of 2017, Thomas's fellow guests included executives at Verizon and PricewaterhouseCoopers, major Republican donors, and one of the leaders of the American Enterprise Institute, which of course is a pro-business conservative think tank. We know what's going on. Like, don't insult our intelligence. And that's what's so infuriating about it. It's just the incessant gaslighting from all of these power players, right? How they insult your intelligence and try to make it seem as though they're doing nothing wrong when it's clear they're doing something wrong. And in this case, Clarence Thomas failing to disclose a lot of this goes against certain laws, which I can tell you about in just a moment. But thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, both sides are guilty of this. There are these confabs that happen in very high-priced resorts, whether it be Park City or media moguls gathering every year, and political figures joining them, and whether it be the CEO of Apple or other media companies. And I mean, this is basically this exposes the operational kind of playbook that is to invite these folks and their families to really luxurious venues, wine them and dine them. And I mean, he's not there, and Thomas is not there because he's a great conversationalist or a great joke teller around the campfire, or wow, he really knows how to, like, these s'mores are amazing. It's not that. It's we know what's going on here, and at least we can see this kind of laid bare for us, and let us all be reminded that even the highest court in the land is just not free of this kind of influence. It's money, pure and simple.
Now, one final thing that I have to bring up is Clarence Thomas seems to enjoy messaging to the American people that he's just an ordinary guy. He's an ordinary guy. He likes the simple things in life. He's not one to really aspire to live in the lap of luxury. And apparently, Harlan Crow is financing a documentary about Justice Thomas's life. And there's one portion of it that I thought was revealing, given that he goes to all these fancy trips every year on, Harlan Crow's dime. So let's hear what Clarence Thomas wants you to think about him.
I don't have any problem with going to Europe, but I prefer the United States. And I prefer seeing the regular parts of the United States. I prefer going across the rural areas. I prefer the RV parks. I prefer the Walmart parking lots to the beaches and things like that. There's something normal to me about it. I come from regular stock, and I prefer that. I prefer being around that.
Right, Brian? I mean, Thomas just loves hanging out in Walmart parking lots. That's the kind of guy he is, which, by the way, if that were true, that would also be a little weird, but I digress.
Well, I mean, there's just anyone I know. I mean, listen, I come from regular stock in Ohio. I live in Georgia now. I live out in the sticks, but the one thing you'll never hear me say to anybody is, hey, I come from normal stock and I love the Walmart parking lot.
It is really funny because he has this caricature in his mind of what ordinary Americans are like. Like, I don't know, what do they do to kill time? I think they hang out at Walmart parking lots.
Listen, my neighbors, they don't brag about how much they love the Tractor Supply parking lot. They go there for feed. They get their chicken feed. They get like their accoutrement for their hen houses or whatever. But no one likes really the Walmart parking lot. It's really just a stopover because that's the only place where you really don't have to pay to park an RV. And you won't get, held up at a roadside rest kind of situation. So you go to the Walmart parking lot. But the declaration of that and identifying that way, even those folks wouldn't say that the regular folk thing.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, this guy is just such a fraud. And this is a big deal. I think it's a huge deal. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still alive and this story came out about her, I would also find that to be unacceptable. But that's the thing. I mean, I feel like broadly speaking, the left has higher standards for people in positions of power on our side. We're quick to immediately, and I think this is a good thing overall. It can sometimes go a little above and beyond, and sometimes we can be overly critical over minor things, but this is not a minor thing. On the right, though, all you hear today is this is a political hit job. It's a political hit job. Yeah, except original reporting dated back to 2011. So there's clear evidence here. And are you just okay with that? You're okay with, as long as it's a guy on your side, you're okay with the corruption. Okay, great.